Are we here? Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Is that my friend John Riley or is it another John Riley?
Uh,
I see my friend Jazzy Ralph. Wait a minute, who are these people? J.J. Johnson. That's not the J.J. Johnson, I believe. Going the wrong place right to start with.
see so many familiar faces.
Yeah,
Um,
but, well, I
Still,
know.
people are coming. So we'll give it a minute for everybody else to enter the room. Make sure you're muted though, because it gets very cluttering if everybody's opening the mic. Right, people are still entering. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
I see people from Italy, Poland, Madison, Wisconsin, Chris from Santa Fe, Andrew from Malta. Wow. Many new faces as well. Oh, Frank. Yes. Frank. Good to see you, Frank. Margaret. Awesome. Great. Somebody has their mic on. John, I'm going to mute you. Great. So maybe just get started, right, Kenny? It's been super long that we done it one of these. I think the last one was in, what was it, June? I think it was June. So we felt like, oh, we want to get together again. So we organized this one. Also to announce special thing we have coming in December. So stay tuned for that. But first, I'll give the word to Mr. Kenny Werner.
Thank you. I'll make some statements about what it is that I teach, effortless mastery, and how much it relates to everything. And then most of the hour will be for questions. Viv, can I have it where I'm not just seeing myself, but I just see everybody?
Just click on gallery view in the far right corner, upper right corner.
Yes,
It
I
says
would.
view.
Oh, I see. It changed itself. Ah,
Yeah,
there we
great.
go. Good.
I
Excellent.
have you pinned for everybody.
Okay, good. Well, welcome everybody. So I'm going to make some statements about effortless mastery, the latest definition of it, what ways you might achieve it, but I'm going to keep my comments very uncharacteristically for me short because it's also an opportunity for people to ask questions. I will be having a weekend of sort of like a retreat, online retreat, where I will be, and Vivian will put it out in greater detail, I will be imparting everything I know and everything that might help you to go on yourself. Get out of your own way, support yourself. However we would say it. So let me start with the most current definition of effortless mastery. And it does evolve because I have the gift of teaching it over and over again. Effortless mastery is separating the body from the mind, liberating the body from the mind, and liberating the mind from the ego. That's it, it's boiled down to that. So, what does that mean? Well, the question is, what is the part of you that plays without question? It's the body. In that way, we haven't really noticed how simple music is. It's much easier for the body than it is for a mind that has been controlling the body. So, if the body plays, it's infinitely easier, and also it's relieved of most of the uh, blocks that are mental, most of the pseudo importance of it. And in that way, you can actually get right to what you're going for without making all those stops along the emotional highway of, how do I play? How am I going to play tomorrow? How do I play now? Could I be better? I wish I started earlier. I wish I had, I'll never learn this stuff. Or getting comfortable with a contracted version of yourself. Getting comfortable with, well, I'm this, but I'll never be that. Um, Effortless mastery kind of changes the whole dynamic. So you go from being a self criticizer and you practice self support. You go from judging what you're playing in real time to practicing honoring what you're playing in real time. And there's a very logical reason for that. Nobody can change their playing in real time. All you can do is wish you were playing better. Also, most of you would agree that when you wish you were playing better, at that very moment, if there was any magic, the magic is gone. The magic comes from, even accidentally, honoring your playing. Maybe because you had a beer. It could be for any reason. Maybe you're playing with friends. And when you play with those friends, the neurological pathway says, I'm safe. But maybe when you play in front of people, the neurological passageway says, I'm in trouble. Or I sure hope sure hope this works. And it would be enough to just have the conundrum, but the problem is that whenever you think about controlling the quality of what you're doing, in fact, the quality goes down. I ask people in the first day of a class, think about a time when you really needed to sound good. How'd you sound? And when you think you need to sound good, most people will say that's when they had trouble getting it going. And then I say, when you were just messing around, how'd you sound? And almost everybody says better. So if you could control your own responses, that would be all you needed to know. Oh, all this time I was sabotaging myself by hoping that I would play better. Well, now that I know this, I won't do that again. Right? Caring at a certain moment, in fact, makes most of us play worse. So now that you know that, you'll just never care again, right? And that's where effortless mastery comes in, because you may believe that, but you can't stop doing it. You may be looking at me and right now we're connecting because it is all about connection. But when you play, it's about connecting with yourself. But if you start to think about playing, then you feel this other thing take over the mind and body of consequences, of possible outcomes, of needs, of desire. And it gets complex and it blocks what can happen naturally. See, because without desire, this always sounds good. And it's not because you're playing the right notes. I play the wrong notes. As long as you're in love with it, it is received with love. So really, on whatever level you think your music's on, right from the start, it could be so much more dynamic and persuasive if you practice loving it. Now, loving it may be a tall order, so how about practicing receiving it? How about practicing embracing it? Now, what keeps you, that brings the mind back in. What keeps you from embracing it? Your ego. And I'm sorry, it's not your dedication to music, in case you thought that's why you care so much, that's why you beat yourself up so much. You just have so damn much dedication to music. Well, it has nothing to do with your dedication to music. It becomes more of a myopic, a sonic narcissism. How do I sound? Do I sound okay now? I sure hope I sound good. Just change that to looking in the mirror, and what would you have? You'd have a narcissist. Now, that's so common that people don't even realize that it's the common block. It's the common fundamental block between you and the truth. So, what is the truth? I'll say this, and no matter how you conduct your life, I don't think you'd disagree with it. You might not be able to do it, but you won't disagree with it. The truth is, your life is infinitely more valuable than music to you. Now, that may sound like a no-brainer, but how many of you remember that as you're just about to play? That your life is more important than how good you sound. So, is the purpose of our retreat to attain some sort of new age acceptance? No. Anybody that would be here today also, along with that, or maybe primarily, has been interested in finding a handle, fumbling for the light switch. How do I turn on the light in my music that I undoubtedly have? Or the thorny issue of how do I actually practice or get better? These kinds of things are only a problem because your mind is controlling them, but not just your mind which is beset by ego. So I will go back to the original definition. Effortless mastery is separating the body from the mind. But it separates the mind from the ego. It liberates the body from the mind so the body can play. That's playing. Only an ego could think that that's not playing because it doesn't check all the boxes on what you think is a valid musician. Of course, the fact that you think there is such a thing as a valid musician leaves you out of the equation, doesn't it? I want to be something that I'm not. But we might not know that it starts with an embracing of something you are. And from there, it's actually easier to make progress. So this is what we work on in classes. We probably have a few people from our longer, lengthy online classes because it takes a while to make that change. So once I understood that music, I think I always understood it, so I don't know exactly why I'm able to teach it. But I've always understood that music's not important enough to walk around feeling bad. There are reasons to feel bad, but feeling bad about how you play or about your music in general is a self-sabotage. Even those of you that agree with that would still like to know, how do you not do it? Everybody's got thoughts they wish they didn't think, but they still think them. So in trying to help people over this 30 to 40 years, I've stumbled on a lot of answers. But the answers are somewhat different than the ones there are a lot of answers to your life available everywhere. I'll bet that there are people here that have taken Taekwondo or Qigong or a meditation class or a yoga class, or you might be a yoga teacher. You might have spent a lot of time with holistic means to be a more fulfilled person. Then why does it disappear when you go to your instrument? So even that phenomenon is something can be explained by what I call, well, there's a Sanskrit word for delusion, Maya, or illusion. Now, I'm sorry it's that word because a lot of people have named their children Maya. And in almost any other language, it means something beautiful. But in Sanskrit, it means illusion or delusion. The Maya of music, fundamentally, is its importance. That's a delusion. The only importance it has is in its ability to enhance your celebration of your life or your embracing of your life or at least receiving of your life. How many of you, you can ask yourself, have spent, depends on your age, either years or decades, preoccupied with how good you play and often not really satisfied with the answers? So the fundamental thing of effortless mastery is to rewire something. And that would be the first period of our retreat. And in the courses, they actually go on for quite a while. It's called the first step. Actually, the step 0 is learning how to catch that stream of thoughts and at least interrupt them. So it took me 60 of my 70 years to realize I can't stop what I'm thinking. but I can interrupt it. And I interrupt it by a short interruption, which I call the 20-second breathing technique. But it's not a breathing technique, it's a watching technique. Whatever your life is doing right now, I'm pretty sure it can be interrupted for 20 seconds. So just try this with me for a moment. Whatever you're thinking about, and maybe right now you're thinking good things because we're together. But whatever you're normally thinking about, whatever's pulling you down, whatever pulls your music down, whatever makes you feel like what's the point in practicing, whatever makes you feel subtly but consistently discontent with what's coming out. All that stuff. Or it could be life, or it could be finances, or it could be a love just lost. It doesn't matter. Whatever that stream is, let's take a break. For 20 seconds, everybody in this room, in this virtual room, is breathing. For 20 seconds, just watch it breathe. Go. Now, if I look like I'm deeper or more spiritual, no. I just went from the scatteredness that is my normal life and focus on one thing that never fails me, my next breath. And when I focus on that, everything that was in the foreground, like my playing is so important, my playing is so important. But if I focus on my breath, that went way in the background. If my breath was a bowl of fruit and I was painting it, it went from being on a table somewhere in the back or not even in the picture to now it's a painting of a bowl of fruit and everything else is the background. And making that connection for short periods of time becomes the comma, the dot, 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 or the period of this stream of conditions that you must satisfy. Otherwise, your life hasn't quite been a success. And if this is resonating with you, it's because I've gone through it myself. It just so happens I haven't gone through it over music. Because somehow I was convinced in the beginning that music was mine. If you read the first book, and I really recommend you read the second book because anyone who's read it and read the first book is telling me they're loving it, which is called Becoming the Instrument. When I first started, my parents got a piano to rent, a little Wurlitzer, and I plucked out any tune that I knew. And I walked into the kitchen confidently and saying, "Good news, Mom, I won't be needing those lessons. I just figured out how to play." Now, kids will do that, but I basically never really moved off that assumption. And I had a lot of talent, have a lot of talent, which does tend to support it. But there are so many twists and turns that can erode your confidence. Maybe the confidence you had as a child, or certainly the confidence or self-acceptance you had before you took the treacherous act of going to music school, for example. You know, that is an exercise in cultivating self-doubt. I think many people can see that, including teachers that teach at school. I am also a teacher who teaches at school. And to Berkeley's credit, they hired me because I think they want to help set up a new paradigm that doesn't bury 80% of the students to support the other 20%. Bury them in minutia, being overwhelmed. But when you leave school, you're still overwhelmed. You still have all those feelings. So the first level of effortless mastery is replacing or undoing, untangling. Let's just say all your thoughts in one room in your brain. And this is my naivety about this subject has since been validated by science. You know, now you can really see that the brain is a programmable thing. So in one room, you have 1,000 thoughts. You think you have to negotiate many issues to try to get to something called peace or being in the moment or trusting yourself. You know, these are like little moments. You have to find your way through 1,000 worms, these little creepy crawly things that seem to have to be dealt with on an individual basis. Now there's this other room And you open that door, and I call that the space. If you read the first book and the second book, I devote a lot of time to the space. What is the space? It's a space. It's a non-denominational name for everything that has to do with any pathway, spiritual, psychological, neurological, philosophical, no matter where, they allude to a place beyond your desires, a place beyond your passion, a place beyond your self-doubt, a place beyond your contracting of your feeling about yourself. And that place beyond actually is not beyond. It could be above, it could be alongside, it could be in here somewhere. I just have tried for enough years, and I found that I can't will myself to live in that space, but I can interrupt it, the other space. Every time I stop and I just watch myself breathe, it's not a spiritual thing, it's not a prelude to meditation, there's no right way to do it. In fact, it's not a breathing exercise because you're already breathing. I don't even know you, and I know you're breathing. It's some kind of ESP. That's my little joke. I know everybody that I can see and I can't see. Without even knowing you, I already know you're breathing. God, how did he know that? Anyway, that's my little humor. So you're breathing already. In fact, you're a virtuoso. On your worst day, you were breathing. On your best day, you were breathing. You just lost somebody. You were breathing. You played the greatest gig of your life. You were breathing. You played the worst gig of your life. You're still breathing. So there is one thing that we could identify as the most important element of your life. And it wouldn't be an overstatement, and it wouldn't be a spiritual statement. So when I take my mind off of my implications of life, where am I going to get to? Am I ever going to get a gig? That's a good one for a musician. When am I going to get gigs? What kind of gigs am I going to get? Who's going to know me? What, asking yourself those questions is the same thing as saying, I think I'll flush this day down the toilet. Because there's never an answer to those questions, but they are enough to erode your confidence for the particular day you're in. So yeah, am I becoming a little more of an expert on, whatever? Yeah, because I keep teaching this. But it's still, if you're musicians, it totally explains everything when you're a musician. If I touch this instrument without expectation, it's an objectivity that you might have only felt like twice in your life. Because it's all been about how good you play. Luckily, they don't have to be the right notes because you can program your operating system, not even the software, to receive the sound you make before you get a chance to think about it. You're already being nurtured by it. Wouldn't it be nice if that actual change happened? So I'm not going to go too long on this, but I figure that there are people that may have studied what I've written, maybe studied with me in the past, maybe even teach in a different way and have questions as to how this can work. But in our retreat together, first thing we're going to do is find out how we change the operating system. A different operating system, some apps won't work anymore. There's an app from Apple that's called I Suck. Does anybody have that app? Of course, it's got to do something with an I, right? I Suck, right? That app won't work on the new operating system because the new operating system only accepts what honors the self. And that has to be reprogrammed. And there's ways of doing it yourself. I promise you, your only misunderstanding is that they're so much simpler than you think. It takes a lazy man to find the easiest way, and I guilty as charged. There are incremental practices that take no time, but they can change your whole perception of everything, and certainly your perception of music. So if I touch the piano, by the way, all the harmony I found was by not being afraid to play what doesn't make sense to my mind. And then I found something out that you chordalists are going to be happy about. There is no chord that's not amazing. In fact, if you keep working this to a sort of a metaphysical place. You might find out what the enlightened people on the earth found out, but the musical version of it. The musical version of enlightenment is this. Every note I play is the most beautiful sound I've ever heard. You know, like, wouldn't you like to at least head in that direction? So that as time goes by, incrementally, music continues to play itself while you marvel. And it doesn't have to do with how good you are, because there is music in this world that's based on nothing more than this. And this is enough to make an entire nation astral travel. So how much do you have to be able to play to be able to astral travel? Maybe not astral travel. To be able to travel. Almost nothing. The answer is not in the music. The answer is in the state of mind. That creates the state of receptivity. The receptivity, or lack of same, colors your entire experience. I almost never talk about the music because when the state of mind changes, you will gleefully say that, at least for that amount of time, the music was beyond what you were expecting, or temporarily wonderful. How do I get there again? It's going to be one of these Zen puzzles. Don't look for it again, but continue to practice little exercises while touching your instrument. So once we get to that, then we're going to go to labeling the things that are in your way so that you know it's not unique. Sometimes someone will say to me, you know, it's just me. Every time I play, I suddenly think, should I play this or that? And I say, well, I got some bad news for you. That's not just you. That's human nature. And it's a human nature formed by a life in the physical universe. It's actually not human nature, because there's a human nature that can transcend physical effects of human nature. And the only misunderstanding, I don't think anybody doesn't believe that, at least nobody that would even check this day out. I think you're here because you know there's a version of you that, for lack of a better word, is probably divine. And that is so much worth your embracing. And of course, it's clouded by doubts and self-criticism that you were taught very carefully by maybe all the way back to your first teacher. Doesn't matter. We don't have to go through why your mother hated you to find this. We simply have to move our focus from the world of thoughts to the space. It would be better to completely find the space for 20 seconds than seek it for 5 minutes. So we're going to go through that. What are the blocks? How usual they are. That should buoy you. If you want there to be something unusual about you, you don't want it to be your problems. You want it to be that wouldn't be unusual. What would be unusual is sort of a carte blanche acceptance of you, from you to you. And it doesn't even get busted by the uber egotistical tightrope of how do I sound? See, it can be nonsense. But first, how do you install the form and changes software? On the new platform, it's a lot easier because the thing that stops you before you achieve what you want is your subliminal or even conscious belief that it's not going to happen. So there's nothing we can't achieve. We don't know how far we can go. That has to do with how many days we'll live. It really does have to do with that, because you have a practice regimen that's not built on self-criticism and pessimism. Then you would just keep doing it. In fact, if practicing became a relief, Can you even imagine it? Of course it could. It has to do with your mindset. And if you were practicing and there was the absence of pressure, the absence of a goal, the absence of what has to happen or else your life was vaguely disappointing, right? Like brushing your teeth. You don't brush your teeth thinking, wow, if I keep doing this, man, I'm going to really get somewhere. In a couple of years, I could teach brushing your teeth, or I'm going to book myself in Carnegie Hall and say, wow, watch how I do it. You don't have a goal when you brush your teeth. Each session is individual and you just know you need to do it. And then you move on. What if your practicing was that way? Then improvement or moving forward would be a fait accompli. It would be a done deal. That which we repeat gets better. Because you did it and it didn't happen in your time, you thought it wasn't happening and you stopped. How many things in life do we do that? I don't know your life. I know I'm a fellow soldier trying to become more effective in my life. That means less doubt about my life. It's taken me to this, which is what jazz is. If I'm going to play. Kids play that way. But you have to become increasingly comfortable with form changes. The second day, after we've really visited the mindset of what it takes for you to get out of your way and move forward and have it be an actual affirming thing, I'll bet there's a bunch of you who stopped practicing because practicing became too painful. That kind of understanding. Then, you know what? I support that. If that's what practicing is, I support you not doing it. Why do you need to incur that on a daily basis or even a weekly basis? But if you get practicing right in your mindset, it could be something you feel like going to several times in a day. And you just have to take away this goal in a way. The goal is there, but you can't hold each day hostage to a goal. If you can refocus away from these demons into a simple place and then connect with your instrument, that is effortless mastery level 1. Level 2 is allowing yourself to improvise over that. Level 3 is seeing how much you can play in form, time, or changes without leaving that space. And level 4 is like get real time. What is the verdict for what I want to practice because I want to be able to do? Yeah, I want to feel that free, but I want to do that while I'm playing Giant Steps, or I want to do that while I'm playing Autumn Leaves. Yeah, then there's an incremental way of practicing. And the best way to handle that incremental movement is to think of it like brushing your teeth. It's not something you're ever going to stop doing, and it's not something you measure your value by. So many of you know that measuring your value. I do say this, I like to throw cold water in people's faces with this. And I would never value my life, assign a value to my life, dependent on something as insignificant as how I play a musical instrument. So, nobody would disagree with that. But how many people are there? Well, I'm putting myself down because of the way I play. What a waste of a life. I don't want to waste this hour, let alone 2 to 60 years. We got some old people here too, and they will assure you it doesn't get better because you get older. It gets better because you realize what it is. And then you work on it. That's why a person takes a meditation course or a yoga course. Well, yoga thing is the body too, but the unintended boon is the quietness of the mind while you're doing yoga, if it works at all. But why are we doing anything? Why don't we just watch TV? That's actually my honest question. Why do we get up from TV? Just watch TV. Before you know it, boom, one day you're dead. You're in the middle of like the 8th season of West Wing, and boom, Actually, that's how my dad died. He was, believe it or not, he was changing a channel. He had a massive heart attack, and his body went flying back. It is so perfect for a Werner to have died while changing the channel. So I know that you can mark off your life by that. But what if it's just as easy to experience the joy of your sound any moment and the hobby? And I suggest your practicing be elevated from a mission to a hobby. Because when you have a mission, you have all the egoistic reasons you can't get there. You have all these hills to climb. When it's a hobby, who gives a shit? I'm collecting stamps. I am not yet the person I want to be because I can't find Amsterdam 1939 or whatever. So elevate your practicing to a hobby. And then you can do it without self-judgment. So we're going to investigate that on the first day of our retreat. And the second day, knowing that music is easier than you think it is, I'm going to reveal my ways of doing harmony, which is simpler than you thought, but yields much more diversion than you, I mean, not diversion, diverse than you thought. And I'm going to show my linear thing, which if you had the mindset to practice for the length of time in your life that you're going to brush your teeth, you would practice this linear thing. Okay? And you would find the architecture of your lines growing at its own pace. The mind can watch the lines grow over the years, but the mind that's still attached to ego, it's unacceptable that it takes that long. Am I ringing any bells here? Okay? But a mind that sets the agenda for the practicing and then allowing the body to work on it. We're not as far along in music coaching as we are in sports coaching. They already know it's about the body. Musicians don't realize it's all about the body. Teaching the body to move in a certain system, let's say an E flat. Instead of thinking you're playing an E flat, you're moving, but your intellect has showed you how to move freely and not leave E flat. Of course, then you might want to put a few chords in and come back to E flat. So learning has to go much. Some people say, oh, this effortless. I've had some arguments with some great musicians, and I really enjoy them because they think when I say you have to love yourself and love your playing or accept it. Well, what about all that work you have to do, man? You have to do this, you know. Yeah, when we get to the work part, without self-recrimination, we actually go much deeper, much clearer, much smaller examples, being much more willing to receive the frailties, not so they say something about us, but because they indicate what we need to practice. If we didn't have an ego, what I'd be saying to you would just be common sense. It is sense. It's just not all that common when it comes to musicians or artists and their art. It's all about something that's been Maya. It's all about delusion. It's not about the obvious. There. I'm already fulfilled. I think I'd rather learn that than even play better. Okay, I really promise I'm stopping right now. So let's take, Vivian, why don't you lay out what we're doing?
Great. So yeah, I'm Vivian. I've been working with Kenny for almost, is it almost 10 years? Yeah. We have a weekend coming up in December, and I'll share my screen. I'll put the link in the chat. We have 2 days with Kenny coming up on December 17 and 18. You can see my screen here. And we called it Effortless Mastery and You, because we need quirky names. So it's a weekend of musical enlightenment with Kenny, where you spend 2 days to either set a tone for the future or reinforce what you have already learned from him. So we want you to become your own best friend while you move through this musical universe, right? So let me just scroll down a little bit. Basically, here's the schedule. We have Saturday and Sunday. All the sessions will be recorded. Also this one you'll just get in your email. So if you had trouble, I know there's a couple of people that had trouble with tuning in late, or the sound, this video will come to you later tonight or tomorrow morning. So you can watch it back in your quiet time. But basically you can register for this weekend coming up in December, 2 full days, like 12 hours with Kenny, which is a lot. Where will we deal with the topics of effortless mastery, becoming the instrument. And on the second day, we'll deal with harmony, melody, and rhythm. So I'm going to put this in the chat, and then we can open up for questions. There's a lot on this page. You can just scroll all the way down and then see for yourself. And yeah, questions you could put in the chat, because there's a lot of people here, and I'll facilitate to get your voice out. Cool. Will Kenny have any workshop after the holidays? You mean the holidays as in Christmas? We're not sure yet. We're trying to figure out next year. Basically, we're super busy with Berkeley. So therefore we chose December 16 and 17. Let me just get that link to you. So 17 and 18 December. Yes. What time zone? So yes, it's between 10 and 6 New York time. So that means it starts 7 a.m. in the other coast, and it will be a little later, like 6 hours later in Europe. EST. Yes. Cost. This weekend will cost you $950, which is a good deal for 12 hours of teaching. The link is in the chat. I'll post it again. Is it certified? We don't certify people yet, because certification, but we can give you an award that you did it, like some diploma for the weekend. But the certification would mean that you're able to teach this, and we're not there yet. But
I don't think we're giving out awards. Okay, maybe a Purple Heart. Go ahead.
Purple Heart. What do you recommend for practicing singing and playing guitar together in this space? It seems obvious. I just connect to the space first, but like an instrument. Right.
All right, I can answer that. It's the kind of thing that you'll be able to do better once we spend some time together. But you have to remember exactly what it is. So it's really great that everything is recorded. And this weekend will only belong to anybody that's there. So if anything answered a question, you can always go back to it. First, you practice singing from the space. Then you practice playing guitar from the space. Then you try them together, but you stay in the space. You may have to try to sing and play guitar, but if you don't try, you'll find out how much you need to learn. For example, a common understanding is that you have to try to learn something. Actually, then you obscure from yourself what it is you don't know. If you just do it and you don't particularly try, you'll actually know very clearly what to work on. So then you can go into that space. I didn't forget her name, but what was her name? Anyway.
I'm scrolling. There's so many.
Okay, I'm sorry. But so
Madison.
let's say,
sorry,
what?
Madison.
So let's say you take a song you know very well. You start to play the chords and you sing with it. Maybe you just do 4 bars to see if it just come out well. Then you drop your hands. You go into what I call the space, which is a place that has no expectation, including no expectation that you'll do it right a second time. And you pick up the guitar and you start singing, and you notice, wow, that didn't take much forethought. Let me try another 4 bars. I don't even recommend them in order, because you might notice already, Madison, that a lot of the songs you know the first part of them better than you know the second, third, and fourth part of them. That's because of a misunderstanding of practicing that we've had since our first piano teacher or our first teacher, that you always start in the beginning. No. start from anywhere, and then any part of that song will become as strong and as sturdy as the first part. So if you take short amounts, remember the song, sing it to yourself, remember the chords, play them to yourself. Now let go. Because you want to, instead of dearly hoping you know it, which actually blocks you from knowing it, you actually are going to the very objective place of letting go so you can find out if you know it. Most of us are afraid, most of us have exactly the wrong attitude when we practice. We're trying to prove to ourselves what we know. That makes practicing, frankly, exhausting. And also so much about rationale that a lot of us just avoid it. If you understood that, let me let go and see if there's a mistake here, because then I'll know what to practice. Now, does that sound like something from, the Tibetan Book of the Dead? No, it's common sense. But when someone's in front of that brainwash, that whatever you call it, that completely distracting thing, music, it's the last thing you think about. So Madison, go to any 4 bars and sing it to yourself. Make sure you know it. You should know it well because you're adding the distraction of playing the guitar at the same time. So I'm going to give you an assignment because she asked a question. And the more someone engages me, the more I'm able to help them. This week, Madison, I want you to discover the functionality of this instead of being in the dysfunctionality of how am I ever going to sing and play. Take any 4 bars of a song you know very well. Make sure you know the chords well. Make sure you know the song well. Sing them together, whether it worked or not. Drop your hands, take a breath, go back to the space, do it again, and only do that with 4 bars at a time, but not consecutive 4 bars. We don't want the beginning to benefit from anything that the second half of the bridge doesn't benefit or whatever. Do that for a week and then find out if you're not already learning how to sing and play guitar together. What has blocked you is subliminal suspicion that it's too difficult. So this is simple enough to eradicate that notion. Okay.
Great. I have a few. There's so many questions, so I'll go fast. I missed the beginning. Will the recording be available? Yes, Scott, it will be available. So it will be sent later on. How many places are in the course? Because this is weekend, we have a lot of spots. With our normal courses, we try to limit it to smaller groups, and the current one we're doing started in August and it will be done around February. It's like a 20-week course, which was a big investment for many of the people that are currently taking this course, but it's been really amazing. But yeah, for the weekend we have space. Scholarship, unfortunately not. Maybe next year, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm a Tapo Barata. I'm a singer-songwriter with a background in jazz, but I'm still terrified of bebop. Would it be a good fit? It's for any style, any instrument.
It has nothing to do with the kind of music. In fact, It has nothing to do with music.
Yes.
It has to do with your perception and how it changes the music you make.
Yeah. Ula says, how do breakout groups work? Yeah, this is the middle part of the first day is called Discovering Your Powers. We'll use breakout groups where that's a Zoom function actually. So we'll just have you talk and discuss in little smaller groups to create also some kind of a community, which is, I think, super nice.
We have found a benefit in the students engaging each other, because first of all, you get this sort of self affirmation that other people are going through the same thing. Then you get the humor of, why are we going through this? And you help each other. And that I've been encouraging more and more.
Okay. Great. The space has depth rather than on or off switch.
The what?
Does the space have depth rather than an on and off switch?
It has whatever you think it has. It's the absence of complications. It's the absence of thought. Even if there's a little thought, it's the absence of focusing on that thought. I'll tell you what the space, there's a good analogy for it. First of all, there's two analogies I'd like to share with you that are old. They come almost since the beginning. Playing music through the filter of your expectations. Oh, I love that. Playing music through the filter of your expectations is like riding a bicycle into the wind. You have to work so hard just to move a little bit. Playing music with self-embracing, even to a fault. It's not important that you're right about your music. It's important you develop a new knee-jerk reaction to accept it. That's like riding a bicycle with the wind at your back. Now, as to the space, the sun and the clouds. The clouds, this is different than a room of thoughts and a space. The space is something unchanging. What you want to do is take your focus off the clutter and put it in the space for any short amount of time. That's where I took a long time to realize it. It's not about how long I can stay in the space. It's about fully experiencing it, even for a few seconds, because the body and the mind remember that. And if you keep returning to there, it starts to form an alternate path of behavior, just like program. It is a program. It's a reprogram. Now, the analogy is clouds are your thoughts. So if we look outside, you might say, wow, the sun is really weak today. But you already know, because we know enough in science, the sun is not any weaker on any day. The truth is always the truth. But there are some days where there's more blocking the light of truth, and some days where the truth is shining bright. We understand that about clouds and the sun. The sun would be the space. To find the space again, you just keep practicing. It's not even removing the stuff from the space. I found it more helpful to acknowledge that all your problems are in one area. So I want to go somewhere else. And that place is the space. But you might like it better as the removal of stuff. I keep cultivating this thing in a way where it's getting harder and harder for you not to get it. The whole idea is it becomes easier and easier and more self-evident quicker, right? So that's why I've taken on the imagery that I have. But it doesn't have, it can be whatever. It's just you know the difference because it's the absence of a lot of stuff that you've never wanted to begin with.
Do you recommend this practice for beginning musicians learning an instrument?
I'm not sure. It depends. Sometimes you have to get in a little bit to get stuck. I think you want to just get in there and learn some stuff. I can give you a little piece of effortless mastery right now. The first thing you're learning, if you're just beginning to do this, don't move on to the second thing while that first thing you're clueless about. That's reaffirming what seems to be the reality that although you're trying to play, you never will. Let's prove that you're a musician on the very first thing you practice by not leaving it long enough to become familiar with it. You've been thinking that this thing is talent-based. Talent provides quicker access. It's like you go to Disney, but you have the what do you call it? The priority pass. You don't wait on the long line. You go in through this other door. I know because I worked with it. She might even be here. My love. I don't know if Betty's here. Buckley. I know she wanted to come.
She
But
is, actually.
yeah, we went to Disney World, and the first time we were the what do you call it again? I forget. The priority, right? The guests, the VIPs. I'm sorry. See, in a world of VIPs, you don't know your value. You can write that down. Okay. Anyway, when we were VIPs, every time we wanted to go to a ride, we went to this side door for the VIPs. So what am I talking about? I don't know. I forgot. Vivian, what was I talking about? What was that analogy for? I already forgot. Anyone else remember?
Practicing as a beginner.
Yes. You want to
Talent.
Yes, you want if you want to find yourself playing music as soon as possible, VIP, not waiting online like the other schmucks, okay? Own the first thing you study. Because once you own it, you'll say, holy shit, this is what it feels like to play music. The next thing you study, you will now have that experience and expect it to join that level of quick access. It doesn't matter how long it takes. It's the quality of how you own something that convinces you you can do this, not the quantum of things you gather that you're clueless about. You know, you can work on 12 things and suck on the 12 things, or you can find out what ownership feels like right from the beginning. So you could take the course and certainly, but what to apply it to a beginner is to go right, to honor yourself enough to whatever that first thing is. Let's say it's this. Don't move on until your ears say, ah, I'm home. Don't move on until your hands do it while you watch. If you're singing, don't move on until you believe you're singing. Don't codify a lack of confidence by the incompleteness of everything you study. And you would do that because you're flinching at music itself. Because as you're starting, if you're an adult, I'm betting anything, you're starting with this baggage. What makes me think I could be a musician? The reason people start young is that kids don't say that. They say, oh, okay, I got to go to my music lesson. And by the time they start doubting themselves, they might already be playing. But when an adult does it, they're really fighting the previous idea that they're not worthy, which is a delusion. Again, the Sanskrit word, Maya. The delusion is that you're not worthy. If you're not worthy to play music, you're not worthy to live. So the fact that you're living proves that that's not true. You know? So take that, however, whoever asked that. If you're a beginner, I think it'll help you begin. But you may want to get yourself in trouble first. Then this stuff will even help more. Okay, next.
Oh, I also forgot, if you, for those that register early, we have bonuses. We have the first 3 people to enroll get a bonus private lesson. And maybe I should just share this.
Yeah, put in the chat. I say, I like this.
Enroll by November 24th. You get the book. We only have 10 available for that deal. And
Wow.
we have the first 3 people
Right, okay.
will get a private lesson with Kenny. So yeah.
You know, there's another bonus. I love it. W.C. Fields mentioned it. If you sign up early, if you sign up regularly, along with that, you get 1 free week of hotels in Philadelphia. But if you sign up earlier, you get 2 free weeks.
But it's on Zoom.
You have to see W.C. Fields. He said, first prize was 1 week in Philadelphia. No, first prize was, oh, anyway, you get the idea. Next question.
Elzbieta, I'm not sure if I pronounced it right. So, how do I get rid of the thought that everything I make up with piano already sounds like something that already has been written, even if it sounds good?
Oh, well, you should understand that there's nobody that doesn't play something that sounds like it's already been written, and stop expecting it from yourself. All that thought is not just useless, it's terribly harmful. Because you're under the illusion that anybody's writing or singing or playing anything that hasn't been heard 1,000 times. Okay, so understanding, if you trust me, then trust this. That is a complete illusion. It's a fantasy. And if there's any chance that you will play something that's fresh to you, the irony of it, it will happen when you never consider that again. You know, I'll say this, I'm going to give you a practice for a week. I don't know if you can do it. You have one thing to do when you sit down to play. You start playing and you practice embracing whatever it is you're playing. So you're a winner whether you do it or not, because if you can't, then you know what you have to work on. And if you can, you're going to notice a hell of a difference. But the actual thing you're worried about is not even possible. So maybe you can drop it just for that very realistic reason. Okay, next.
How many years of letting go did you go through?
Oh, well, I went through a lot of years of fucking up. You know, trying to let go. you know. And when you're ready to let go by any means, you never know what kind of trouble you're going to get into. Well, all right, let me just answer the question. 60. I'm 70, and I think I knew I had a problem in here and in here, probably at 11 already, you know, so 60 years. But I'm dedicated to shortening it up for you by addressing from the wounded to the wounded, not from somebody that knows something because they're wise. Maybe I was wise enough to gather up the things that helped me get out of that. And I had a gift to be able to present it in a way that will be appealing to you, and another gift to divine exercises that will change you. And we know that because we've been doing this now we've been doing it in classes since I think 2014.
Right.
See,
So
people
at
don't
Berkeley,
change back. If they get enough of it, they don't change back. They actually know that there's something they can do to as the change seems to be leaving you, you start over. I can give you that right now. You
yeah,
don't try to extend your spiritual power. You just keep starting over when you lose it. You don't water a tree at the branches, you water it in the root. Next.
Joe, who our friend Joe says, many teachers say, okay, let's move on, and you don't get time to actually own it. That's totally right. Who else? Is it possible to be aware and stay in the space? How is it possible to be aware and follow a singer and stay in space? There was somebody else that asked a similar question. How do you deal with like the others in the band that might not be in the space, right?
First, I want to answer what I thought the first question was. How do
Right.
you perform, sing, play, and remain in the space? You have to sacrifice your dearest possession, your need to sound good. You can't find this space and be conscious of your need to sound good at the same time. So, yes, we do ask you to jump off a cliff, except you find out it was 2 feet low. Because this cliff, what is the worst thing can happen? I played a bad gig. Oh my God. If I say it out loud, you know how silly that is. But many of you, hundreds, have actually been under the yoke of that delusion. That how good the gigs is says anything at all about you. Except what you need it to say. What do I need to work on? See, a successful athlete already knows that. Not musicians often don't because I don't know, I'm not an athlete, so it seems to me that they understand it's about getting the mind out of the way and programming the body. That's a vocalist too. The vocalist that seeks to conquer the room gets a sore throat. The vocalist that goes inside, like one of the most dynamic presences that I've ever experienced, my soul sister, Betty Buckley. When she got up there, she was so wrapped in the story that she would make people cry. You know, the way you grab people is not by going out, it's by going in. And how do you go in when the thing blocking you is you? This centurions at the gate, and they're your sense of context, quality control, validity. Validity is a word I want you to eliminate, because if you think that there's such a thing as a valid musician, then you'll never become one. If you're a swinger and you ask yourself, am I swinging? You already have your answer. No. Because someone that's swinging is having too much of a good time to stop and ask that question. It's like saying, am I breathing? The only time you would even be curious is if, God forbid, you had trouble doing it. So this is about elevating yourself from a human being who's the musician to becoming a tree that plays the instrument. In fact, becoming the instrument that plays the instrument. I'd much rather be the instrument than the person responsible. And that may sound a little flippant, but anybody that's ever had a successful radiation of magic through an entire audience knows that they were more in touch with what they were connecting with within. It's a common misnomer a misunderstanding. I have to get these people. Those people look like they're trying to get you. You know, you go inside, and even someone that's only playing this. Look, I'm going to play as simple as possible, but things are going to occur to me because I'm not looking for anything. Ah. I wasn't going to go there, but something moved me there. Oh, shit. See, a little jazz is good too. Wow, did you hear that last chord? It sounded like a motorcycle. So it doesn't matter what you play. Look, there are people that are making millions of dollars just because they love what they're doing in front of people. And then there's other people that are trying to get over doing the same thing, and for some reason it doesn't work. There is some natural connection between the genuine passion you feel for any sound you make that makes you walk in a little more light. And you know what? It's not the music people are looking for, it's the light. Next question.
If I'm busy that weekend, is it worth buying the session or just rewatch and just rewatch later, or should I wait for your future? I would say, yeah, it's up to you though. It's always nice to see each other's faces. Therefore, we don't sell like videos basically. But if you only can be at a couple of the sessions, then yeah, totally
Wait a
go
minute.
ahead.
We're talking about the weekend program.
Right. Yeah.
Well, a couple of sessions. You mean a couple of sessions in that day?
In that weekend, right?
Yeah.
Because they're all 2-hour blocks. So yeah, if you can make, maybe you cannot just attend the first one or like the later one, or you can only attend it one day. That's totally fine. Yeah, but yeah, up to you.
The information will be something you'll want to review because I
Yes.
learned a term from program. It's
Yeah.
simple, but not easy.
Totally. We found for all the courses we do, we have all the videos for the people signed up for the course to review for eternity. And we do find that many people watch them over and over because, it's great to be reminded of what it was again.
The simplicity of what it was.
Right.
I promise you it'll be simple. I also promise you you'll complicate it, but then you'll have a source to remind yourself of the simplicity.
Yes. I have another question I love. Sonny Campos says, I've only discovered Kenny about 2 weeks ago. My question is, what was the original lesson that became the laid back challenge?
Oh, no, it wasn't a question.
That's his
What
question.
happened? This
It
went
just,
viral. Go
yeah,
ahead.
the laid back challenge went viral. It's a video on Instagram where Kenny is just basically laying backwards, playing the piano,
Oh, you're
stretching
reminding me I need to
back.
stretch my back. Okay, let me explain
Yeah, go
in,
for it.
in less profound terms. We were playing in LA with my trio. So first we played this other school in another part of California, and we drove to LA. And we had only gotten in the day before, and I was tired. So I had one of these chairs that had a very weak back. I don't think it was supposed to be that loose. So I said, as Betty and anybody that knows me as a player, there's no lengths I won't go to relax while I'm playing. At home, I actually have a recliner. I actually have it over here, but I thought it would be better if I sat on a chair. But I certainly don't use a piano bench, which is one of the dumbest chairs I've ever seen in my life. So I'm sitting there and I go like, you know what? I need to lie down. And the chair went all the way back. And we were playing Lonnie's Lament, which is a John Coltrane tune. And it's really burning. And I'm going, it's like, it goes like this. Right? And then I'm blowing it. anyway, and thinking of John Coltrane at the moment. And what happened was Vivian videoed it and it went viral. So then there were people sending us videos of them playing their instrument while lying straight back on their chair.
Yeah, we got over 100 videos of other people doing that.
Well, the thing went viral. It was what? I don't know, 200,000 people or whatever. You know
Yeah.
how it is. I just said to them, I appreciate it, but if you would all just send $1, that'll be fine. You know, you have 1 million people. What's the difference? But it went viral, and we had a lot of fun with it. A couple of whole bands did it, and they were playing their ass off. So for all I know, this is accidentally the way to do it. And maybe you shouldn't look at, oh yeah. If you were raised the way I was, there's nothing feels better than laying down. Next question.
Were you already in the space when you recorded Beyond the Forest of Mirkwood? Damien asks.
Probably, but it was very inflicted with various inducements. I'm sure I was in the space because I pretty much played from the space since I started. But not to the degree it would have been even a few years later and a few years after that. I have found more and more the space is not the space or something else. The space, not being in the space is still being in the space. It really is a phrase I came up with that sounds rather guru-ish, but I love it, so I'm just going to say it. There's this and there's that. And when that becomes this, there is no that. So, was I in a space? Undoubtedly. Next question.
Jose wrote a whole little paragraph that I'm gonna, he says, I'm a young new father, halfway done a music degree at the Berkeley Partner School. It's been hard for me to let go of the dream of going to Boston to finish the last 2 years of school, but I feel it would be too much of a financial burden for us, or better said, impossible, even with a decent scholarship offer. Do you think this is a better path for me that will also give me better tools to pass to my daughter than what I've received and will receive in another 2 years of music school?
The question is much wider, but much simpler. You can struggle with your life as it is, the depression, the disappointment, the anxiety, not being present for your daughter because you're thinking you really need to do something else. Or you can practice acceptance, which brings you into the picture. Acceptance is, as it says, acceptance. There's the serenity prayer. God, if you believe there was a God, and that's totally optional. You don't need to believe there was a God to draw a lot of strength from the idea, I got to tell you. Because I still have no idea if it exists because I never saw him, it, she, they, whatever. But I imagine there is something, right? So God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change. That's the nature of your paragraph, whatever his name was. I'm sorry. That's the nature of your paragraph. The courage to change the things I can. That would mean anything that looks like a means of taking that shot, you take it. But this is the most important part, the wisdom to know the difference. Now they say, thy will, not mine be done, but that might be, that's only if that phrase doesn't absolutely terrify you, which it terrifies more people than it inspires. Thy will, not mine be done. Holy shit. Well, that's okay, but if your will better line up with what I want to do. My religiosity is very conditional on getting what I want. I say there's nothing more that creates, agnostics than life not going the way you want it to go. And that could be a person that was like a holy whatever, and then suddenly shit's not going right. It's like, does it really exist, Listen, you will get more joy. You will be more, and I went through what you're talking about. I had a child, and I had a mortgage, and there was no way to just do the things I thought I could do. Of course, in my case, maybe because I was older, once I had a child, a lot of this wasn't that important, as important. Now, maybe you're too young for it not to be important yet. So maybe you need to practice. acceptance of the conditions of your life, no matter what they are. You may not believe it. How do you practice acceptance? Tell you the truth, for me, it comes back to distracting myself from my lack of acceptance. My lack of acceptance is in that crowded room of worms, of thoughts. Okay? If I go into the space, I don't need acceptance because the space is only this moment. Lack of acceptance can only be a regret from your past or an anxiety about your future. So I would practice before I make a decision, whoever that was, I would work on acceptance. Now you might find a course that speaks the same language and you saw it online. Or I used to say you might see it, pinned up to a wall in a health food place. Nobody does that anymore because it's all online. You could just Google, accept myself, and there would be some amazing things. My suggestion is before you make a decision, wean yourself off the need to make a decision and practice accepting whatever it is at this moment. And that comes from years of sadness, displeasure, discontent, bitchiness, or trying to escape it. You could cut that short. You can go on the VIP line. Practice accepting yourself. Maybe in 2 years, it's a familiar place you go to. Maybe as you're doing it, you become convinced that acceptance of yourself makes you happier than trying to satisfy what your desires are. And those desires, you will not accept yourself unless those desires are fulfilled. That is self-sabotage to the extreme. Doesn't mean people don't go through it for an entire lifetime, but you don't have to. If there's something to work on, you start with that. And you know what? When you work on accepting what is, things do start to fall in place. I would never guarantee that, but I can't deny that that has been my experience.
Right. There's a question a couple people asked. Would be very curious about your definition of talent. The way people interpreted this tends to limit many musicians.
You mean the definition of talent?
Yes.
It's access. That's like born with a VIP pass. Because you might do the same work other people will do, or much less, and you already see what it is. That was what it was in my case. But talent is not a deal breaker. Talent can be compensated for by a good, humble process of discovery and then implementation. The humility comes in waiting for the changes to come to you instead of being unsatisfied with yourself because they're not coming in your time. So, now, talented person, yeah, I don't know why. I also personally believe that reincarnation plays a big part in it. You'd have to believe in reincarnation. But for me, it's like the other way around. I've seen some musicians that were kids that I was pissed off about because, I'm tired of kids that play like unbelievably. But the fact is, if there is such a thing as reincarnation, there has been a mass reincarnation of masters in every subject of life. Have they been sent here to help us to save ourselves from the incredibly horrible shit that we as a species have created? Have they been come to save us? Have they just come because they're supposed to, it's their rotation in the batting order? I have no idea, but there's no doubt that what used to be quite rare 30 to 60 years ago is commonplace now. And I'd be watching somebody, I had an experience with a kid, I won't say his names, but as we're playing together, I'm saying, it's not just that he plays well. He's having experiences playing with me that he couldn't have. He didn't spend years getting high in his loft with his friends and jamming all night and then going out to breakfast at a Chinese restaurant and then having, sweet and sour pork for breakfast. I mean, that's all what went into this shit that I'm doing. How's he doing this? The kid's 9. Well, he must have been here before. I can't think of anything that's explained that. They're all theoretical, but I can't think of anything that explains it better. Now, I'm sure genetically they can trace it, whatever. Talent is easy access, but it's not a deal breaker. and you don't know how much talent you have, and it's never helpful to wonder how much talent you have. It's much better having achieved a humility that comes from the absence of preoccupation with self. Humility doesn't have to be, it could be the absence of preoccupation with yourself. So let yourself learn the next lesson. It's time to play. They didn't use the verb to play when everything else is, that should be a clue right there. I don't care if I sound good, but I certainly want to play. So acceptance of yourself will reveal the most amount of talent you have. The presumption that others are talented, more talented than you, though it may be true, is not helpful to your mindset. It limits your optimism. So, yeah, are there, that's, again, back to the short answer. Talent is easier access, but it's not a deal breaker.
Another. Do you have an extra tip for practice and performance for classical musicians?
Yes. Okay, first of all, you have to practice the same thing, a blanket acceptance of what your hands or hands and armature or voice or hands and feet in the case of drummers or percussionists. You practice the first step, which is accepting what the body can play. When it comes to classical music, you have to learn a piece on a much deeper level. You don't want to learn it well enough to play it right if you manage it. That, for me, is a recital. A concert is mastering that piece so that you could be thinking about where you're going to go to dinner afterwards, and the hands got it, or the armature and the hands got it, or the hands got it. Look at some people who you think are masters after we're done, but notice what you might not have noticed. No matter where their head is at, their body is doing the playing. That's a real clue. In the case of jazz people, you have to be masterful of the elements of music: rhythm, harmony, and melody. If one of those things, or two or three of those things, are very conditional on you not having a cold, or you got enough sleep, or somebody pissed you off, or you took the wrong medication, or whatever, then you haven't achieved what's available. You can have an effortless relationship to harmony. You can have an effortless relationship to rhythm or melody. You have to approach it without demanding anything from it. And then you can watch it grow incrementally with a contentment and acceptance of yourself that you're cultivating as the foundation of the whole thing. Was that the question, or was I still aiming at the answer to the question?
Yeah, that was the question.
Okay.
Rich Rosenthal.
So a classical player wants
right.
to get to a place where they have a lot of confidence in what their hands will do for that piece. Then they have to keep practicing letting go. They have to replace the God of needing to be perfect, if any of you have that God, with the God of self-love. Look at my eyes. What the hell just happened? Wow. Replace the God of needing to be perfect with the God of self-love or self-appreciation, or at least, appreciate or embrace. Practice embracing where you are and you'll play better. If it made you play worse, I wouldn't recommend it. But you can answer your own question. Has the demand to play better made you play better or worse? So I'll leave the question there.
Cool. Well, we'll have 5 more minutes and then we need to round it up. I think Rich Rosenthal had a nice comment. Will there be an online support group where all students can help each other for free? We actually have like Facebook groups that we built for all our courses, and it's been very nice for everybody to be able to connect and share their experiences.
One thing that takes them one level deeper is the ability to see the problem in one of their colleagues that took the class. And as they're responding, we always can fix other people easier than we can see what we need to fix in ourselves. Have you ever noticed how comfortable it is to give someone else advice? And you just feel all-knowing. And I don't know about you, but my prayer for most of my life is, can I please listen to the shit I'm telling somebody else? Because it's the right shit. Being able to teach something doesn't mean being able to do it, by the way. But as that group supports each other, they find they know the answer, and then they come back and it becomes just a little more real for themselves. So there's great value to maintaining the connection between the Facebook group is made up of the people that chose to take that particular course together. And yeah, it's exactly what you just said. Online support from each one, for each other.
Robert said, I left my music career and spent a year at a Zen monastery doing intensive meditation training. Never really felt like I found a quiet space. This felt very disheartening. I'm wondering what your advice is to rekindle a relationship with the space.
Well, wait a minute. How did you lose the space? This is a great question because this is what you really have to acknowledge for yourself. Ask that again. I mean, when did he lose it, or he, she, or they lose it?
I
When they
think,
left it, or when they started playing music again?
no, Robert says, well, I don't know if Robert's still here. Let's see, Robert. Oh, yes, you're here. You want to explain for yourself?
Yeah, I guess I felt I had more of a connection to it when I was in my before 20. And I guess I kind of went to the monastery to see if I could rekindle it in my playing. I was already working plenty. I just didn't really feel that connection.
Right. Okay. Now I can answer you. That's because you had dropped a lot of the demands in your life when you had made the neurological choice to go to a monastery. Simultaneously came a suite of uh, accompanying related thoughts, like I'm giving up worrying about where I'm working. If you're a musician, self-confidence is like who you're working with or who you're playing with. Or self-confidence, how busy are you in September, which is not self-confidence at all. But when you went to a monastery, the accompanying thoughts were, I'm ready to give up. When you came back to music, there was one thing you weren't able to surrender. Therefore, all the work done in general is lost. You weren't ready to surrender the need to sound good. And with that narcissistic concern, you cannot retain. Now, it's not lost. Actually, it's right there. You go to your instrument and remember the sweetest moment in the monastery while your hands or your voice or whatever plays the instrument. Don't spend even the littlest amount of attention on what you're doing. And you'll find that the two come together. You can't connect something so perfect as what your intention was when you went to a monastery. That already to me shows attainment. Somebody decides to go to a monastery, I think it shows a lot of understanding of what the equation is. The thing that creates problems in my life is me. Boy, I can certainly codify that. Yeah, there are times when people, in the program, I learned this. If I have a problem because I like to carve together everything. I've had a guru, I've looked at this, I've looked at that. Even there's some things that nothing but plain old AA program answers. So they said to me, if I have a genuine resentment because somebody did me wrong, my only issue is there's something wrong with me. So for a lot of years I said, oh, come on. I'm not trying to be Christ here. I just don't want to end up someplace and not remember where I was. Can you just help me with this addiction? I have to like turn a cheek. What is it? How religiosity do I have? No, it was very practical. If someone genuinely wronged me, there's something wrong with me. I have resentment. So people in program, for example, have to pay more attention to that than other people. They can nurse a resentment for decades. A person in program, that resentment might be the thing that says, oh, fuck it, I'll have a drink. So people that are in program are on a much more razor's edge to practice something that happens to be the wisdom of the ages. What was the question? But you know what I mean? Yeah. What was the question? Because I know that caused me to give that answer. Viv? Viv?
Oh, sorry, I was muted.
Why has
Um,
thou forsaken me? Okay, Viv?
I was answering other questions in the chat in the meantime. It was
Oh.
about where did my notes go?
Okay, forget it. Next question.
Monastery.
Betty.
The monastery, right?
Yeah,
Where
yeah,
Robert.
yeah. You're already like evolved enough to even think that's in the realm of answers, but you're not evolved enough to. Music has its own Maya, its own delusion, and it is more powerful than the Maya of other things. I've seen people with levels of attainment that I truly admire. Attainment, okay? How do they do that? You know, I'll just give you a story. There was a guru, a teacher, that I've followed on and off. I mean, she definitely taught me a lot of stuff, but I also played a lot in this situation, right? So people that followed the same thing, they knew me the same way everybody knows me. The way I make sure they know me, I make sure they've heard me play. Like where's my love for who I am without playing? I've been trying to tackle that the last few years. Okay, but one day this teacher sent one of the swamis to me. Now the swamis are people that by my own measure have transcended, that's where that word relates, transcended so many things that I'm hung up on. They don't need to marry. They don't need to have sex. They don't need to have children. They don't need to make money. As with anybody that's on that level of, or in that incarnation, or that level of, desire, the Hasidics pray that when they go, they have all these opportunities during the day to think about God. And then they pray when they go to sleep that when they sleep, they'll dream about God. So there are some people on this earth that are motherfucking crazy, okay? However, that's how much of an answer that provides for them at this stage in their incarnations, or whatever you want to say, right? So she sent one of these swamis to me. This is great. Who I personally know has transcended most of what I am hung up on, to take a piano lesson. So he comes into the house, he sits down in front of the piano, and immediately, he looks like this. And I've never seen him like that before. And I looked at him and I said, Swamiji, have you forgotten who you are? Because that's the question, who are you? That was Ramana Maharashi, I can't say his name. He had one practice, who are you? So I looked at him and suddenly he was this inadequate being in front of the majesty of a piano. And I said to him, did you forget who you are? He looks at me, he looks at the piano, and he bursts out laughing. That was the end of the lesson. Some people have to know. I mean, if you are lucky enough to have a teacher, that teacher may see, yeah, he's all that, but when he gets to this, he thinks he's nothing. There's no exceptions in the word unconditional. I used to follow a very simple, I still follow a very simple teaching. I just can't always think of it this way. It's so unimaginable. Bow down to my own self, worship my own self. God dwells in me as me. That was actually in the second book, and I was given permission to use it because it's a subject that should make sense. It's not a subject of this aura of spirituality. Hey, I'll put it very simply. If God is love, then how would I connect with that if I don't love myself? I have to be a separate drop that dries up in seconds instead of a drop of an ocean that never dies. But the analogy breaks down because you become more of your own personality when you have that connectivity supporting you. And that is a practice. And I've been gifted with having to naturally refine those practices until it can even be done during the recent era of the government that we had a few years back. I was pretty pissed off, right? So I would say this exercise is so easy, even an American can do it. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, I had to make it easier and easier because if I couldn't do it, I had to honor my laziness. You know, they say necessity is the mother of invention, right? No, laziness is the mother of invention. What is the biggest first invention? Well, okay, fire. The second one, the wheel. How many thousands of years would they go without a wheel? Was it necessary? No. Some guy was tired of walking. Laziness is the mother of invention. So instead of wishing I was someone different, which I spent the first, from 11 to 63, still expecting to be somebody else, I started to embrace whatever I was. And then my creativity, which you all have, started to fashion the exercises to be less than I thought they were, to be less meaningful, or certainly not to get hung up on dwelling about the meaningfulness of it. And all my answers started to become contrary to everything I ever heard in life. You want to find something? Don't look for it. I heard an old farmer in AA say, I'll look for God everywhere. And I stopped looking and I found him. We know this stuff by now. This is like licks. But have you ever done it? Have you ever spent a minute practicing total embracing of whoever the hell it is you are? How about 30 seconds? How about 20 seconds? Maybe the idea got met with too much resistance. That's why I don't think I can change my mind. My mind is smarter than I am. This is what I like to say. My mind is smarter than I am, but my hands play better than I do. And this way, I'm not even involved. I am what I'm supposed to be, the witness. If my mind is detached from my ego, then my mind won't get in the way. But a mind detached from ego watches in wonder, watches in delight, watches in sadness, if there is sadness, watches in forgiveness. Because let's say you're watching and you don't like what you're playing. Now, you want forgiveness to become like a reflex, like when you hit your knee and it moves. There is a structure that supports you like nobody can. And I keep cutting it down to what could we do minimally while bowling, while watching the Super Bowl. There can't be this and that because we're always losing this and falling into that. You have to bless that as this. And after a while, you start to believe it. And then, you know what? There's no that. There's only this. Listen. Right now, I've moved a few pages and I'm seeing my beautiful soulmate friend. I'm seeing you, Betty, okay? And this is an expression of like, I'm tingling. Because I know normally you would start singing something and then I wouldn't even have to think about me. That's how all-engrossing that would be. You just gave me thank you for letting me be myself. Again. That song had a hip thing, man. It's just doing it. And I want to be able to report that doing it is easier and easier. Less and less need to be in a like I'll give people this. I'm going to give you all this exercise. We're going to do it again. Is everybody here breathing? Yes, of course. Without any intention, without any implication of profundity, without any thinks of first step towards spiritual attainment. There's a gizmo in here, and it breathes for 20 seconds with absolutely no intentionality. Watch it breathe. With practice, this cuts through the line. I didn't even know it. I just had to keep finding something simple enough that anybody could do. I know this looks like something, but it's nothing. Instead of thinking, I sure hope they like this, which I don't really think about anyway. There's only one way to liberate your performance. There is one essential. There are more than one essentials, I should say. But there's one essential. You can't worry about how your talking or your ideas or your voice or your music or your art is being received. that is cutting the power off at the knees. And that takes practice. As good as it sounds, what I have found out, the gift of what I've learned from teaching these years, a very unique thing that I came up with myself, the gift of it is I've learned that the distance between your philosophical statement and what is attainable is some sort of incremental, minor practice. That the regularity of it will be more self-regulated the more you equate it with something like brushing your teeth. That is the absence of expectations. I'm sure you've read in at least a dozen books by now that expectations ruin the moment. But has anybody actually managed to stop having them? Maybe some of you have. And then when you come to your instrument, for some reason, it doesn't carry through because of the Maya of music. But what I found is that you can incrementally get there. The increments are smaller than you think they have to be. It's not about the clothing of a devotee. It's not about a temple. It's not about a church. It's not about the posture you're sitting in. It can be as simple as watching your breath and to take a break from the dialogue of your dysfunctional monologue. Well, let me put it this way. For me, it became a fork in the, after doing this exercise, it became a fork in the road. I often go to the left, which I think is my evil side. It's also my dysfunctional side. It's the side that calls me sadness. It's what I lovingly call the shithole. So I will go down that road and I could be going down just a little bit, but with practice I go, oh yeah, I've been down this road many times. It never ends well. I don't end up, wow, I'm so glad that I figured out the answer to all my problems. No, all I did was become not present because there were no answers for any of my problems, right? So I'm going down the shithole. However, now there's this fork to the right. Well, I'm already breathing. I'm going to interrupt it. This is new. You have all learned to expect more of a demonstration to change yourself than that. That's got to be the least amount. But for the moment that you're truly only watching yourself breathe, you may just be aware of that path. Now, this is the other innovative part of it. When you're done with that 20 seconds, give yourself full permission to go back to the shithole. Because it is your resistance to it that gives it strength. I only found this out because I have the honor of making every mistake you can possibly fucking make. And then I said, well, this must be simpler than that. If there is a God, it's in the book I said, here it is, a spot. God in the book, the new book, is of course, speaks like a jazz musician, of course. He says, no, man, you don't need all that shit. No, God, you killing people over there? But whoa. Look, I put a button in your body. Press that button and all your problems will be gone. What if it is no more complicated than that? I want to at least allow for that, right? So it's funny because as that's been swimming around, I have noticed that when I watch my breathing, then I say, okay, let me go back. I had severe problems today. I'm not going to share them, but they were debilitating. But I got a break. I get to talk to you. Teaching this is really great for your spirit. After a while, you go, you know what? I'm going to fucking do it myself. This is hip shit. I'm going to do it myself. So even whatever you took today, show it to somebody else, not the videos because they're yours. Or you want to, whatever, I don't care. But it's just accepting. It is simple. But because of how we are, it's not easy. Boy, they got it. Bill W., 1930, whatever. That was the first realistic religion in America, AA. It's the first thing that acknowledges you're not well. We're all addicts. We're addicted to things going right. We're addicted to being accepted. We're addicted to being loved. We're addicting, the shortcut, the VIP pass is to work on self-acceptance. And that can be done in little increments. Because if it's big things, I've tried that already. They always collapse for me. I can feel myself, oh, wow, I've changed. And as I'm driving away from the place I went to change, I can already feel it's changing. And I know that as soon as I turn the radio on. Because the truth is, nothing is everything. Oh, God, did I just say that? But it's really true. Now I see why these guys say what they say. After a while, it passes this, you're being this deep spiritual guy, and you just go like, of course. Of course. If I sit here, I can be entertained by my breath. As it applies to music, as you're about to worship the God of inadequacy, the God that says you were born inadequate, and that's, you play music with that understanding. Let me take a break from that God and do the God of acceptance. How do I do that? Well, the words themselves are too heavy to carry. You know, beware of New Year's resolutions, by the way. They're kind of designed to fail because they're too big. Okay? However, replace that with the God of acceptance. How do I do that? I'm going to watch myself breathe. Now, if I watch myself breathe for 5 minutes, I may not get there because 5 minutes feels to me like a real, wait a minute, if I let go of my problems, they'll get out of control. Nobody really thinks that, but they react to that. And that's neurology. It's not spirituality. It's habit-forming patterns of thought. And the good news is change is possible. The bad news, it's a bitch. It takes steady, incremental actions towards a goal without any need to reach the goal. And that's how we get this bebop lick. It's not the destination, it's the journey. But whoever said that, make sure that they don't go back and they're on their phone trying to control everything in their life. It is the journey, not the destination. But it's easier to say it than to be it. Like I said to you, Betty, it's easier to use a heart emoji than to give your heart. You like that, you know? This shit's coming out of my mouth all the time, so fuck it. The short form of the Serenity Prayer is fuck it.
So on that note, I want to announce that we hope to see you at the weekend of December, and you'll hear more of us for sure. This video I'll send it to all, and thank you, Kenny. We're gonna
Thank you, guys.
leave it with that. So good to see you all. Take care.
Kenny, thank you.
Betty, we'll talk soon, right?
Thank you. It was
We
great.
need to do a Zoom, and we just got to express love that's been welt up.
It's amazing. Thank
I'll
you.
call you for an appointment.
Adios.
All right. Love you guys.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.